Hello and welcome to our Q&A for Plant Medicine for Modern Epidemics, the 6-month live video course exploring clinical level herbal treatments and self-care. I'm Ann Patricio with the Shift Network, and I'm honored to be your host as we explore the teachings of David Crowe and address questions about his course, Plant Medicine for Modern Epidemics, which begins on Wednesday, January 29th at 5 p.m. Pacific. Now, if you're unable to join us live, you won't miss the course. I'll explain more about all of that as well as other details later. But first, I'd like to introduce my guest. David Crowe is one of the world's foremost experts and leading speakers in the field of botanical medicine and grassroots healthcare. He is a master herbalist, aromatherapist, and acupuncturist with 30 years experience, actually more than 30 years experience. An expert in the Ayurvedic and Chinese medical systems, David is an author, poet, and the founding director of Floricopia Aromatic Treasures, a wonderful company that sells the most beautiful essential oils. He's one of our beloved faculty here at the Shift Network, and it is my honor to welcome him. I've actually known David for almost 30 years, as he was my teacher and acupuncturist, supporting me through health challenges in the past. And today, I still use the information that I learned from David many years ago around herbs and essential oils. He is very special, so generous, and just a fabulous human being. So it's my pleasure to be here with him. We're going to spend our time together exploring your questions for David as we prepare for his live video course, Plant Medicine for Modern Epidemics, which begins on Wednesday, January the 29th. Please go over and visit our website, plantmedicineformodernepidemics.com, to learn more about this 6-month video course. You'll also find a link to register there. Now, in a moment, I'm going to pass it over to David, who's going to take it from here. Thank you for those of you who have posted so many questions to the webcast ahead of time. And for those of you joining us live, if you have a question for David, we welcome you to post it and just type it in, and we'll share them with David. And now, join me in welcoming our guest. Welcome, David.
Thank you so much, Anne, for the very nice introduction. And very nice to be here. And thank you to everybody for joining us in this question and answer session. And thank you to those who have submitted so many wonderful questions. As always, there are many, many questions. And this session is always so short. And there will be more coming in on the Facebook Live stream that I will be able to see. Now, as we get started here, I want to make everybody aware that because there are so many questions, and what I do is I organize them. So I try to answer several questions at once. And the way that I can do this is by putting together questions that are very similar and specifically about health conditions that we're going to be covering in the course. So I do have to give priority to certain types of questions. And these will be questions, first of all, that are widely relevant to everybody. And the second criteria is that these are questions that are going to be directly covered and addressed in the course. And so that will give everybody a good overview of what we're actually going to be doing in the course. And that way, we'll be able to answer a lot of questions in a very short period of time, and also to keep things very focused here. So it's not just answering the questions that I'm going to attempt to do. However, I'm going to try to do several things at once. And the other thing that I would like to do, as well as giving lots of practical information to many of these questions, because the questions, for the most part, are the type of question, what do I do for this kind of condition? And I will give you some answers. But that's also what the course is about. But the course is more than that. The course is also about how do we get to a higher level of taking care of ourselves. And to understand this goal or this intention in presenting this information, we have to look back a little bit historically. And if we consider what was happening even just 10 years ago in the world of natural medicine, there was nowhere near the amount of interest or participation. And we can certainly say that even that there was less 15 or 20 years ago. So there's been an explosion in interest in natural medicine. And this is wonderful. But it's also very confusing because there are also simultaneously a lot of innovations happening with allopathic medicine, and also people are learning the dangers and the problems of allopathic medicine. So the kinds of questions that people are asking now are actually extremely sophisticated compared to the kind of questions that people were asking 10 years ago, because 10 years ago, a lot of people had never even heard of certain basic herbs and they weren't using them very widely. So now herbal medicine has really come into mainstream awareness and consciousness and use. And with that, there is a big learning curve that everybody is going through, practitioners and patients. And in this learning curve, there is also a lot of influence from traditional medical systems, such as Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine have also been contributing to this, and also a lot of influence from modern research, looking at specific herbs and treatments, and especially the biochemistry of the plants, and doing a lot of clinical studies and in vitro testing and so forth. So it's really kind of a golden age of medicine in a certain kind of way. But it's also extremely confusing. And the reason that it's confusing is because all of this is also mixed up with marketing. And with marketing, it really confuses the issue. It kind of clouds the information quite a bit, because there's a motivation to sell something, and a lot of claims are made about things that are not really being looked at from the clinical standpoint. So what I'm also attempting to do with this question and answer session and the course in general is to help us all to move towards being our own clinician to a greater degree, to have a higher level of self-care. And as we go through the questions, I'm going to be using the questions as an opportunity not just to tell you about certain herbs that work for these conditions, but I would also like to really address, how do we start to think like a clinician? What does that actually mean, to go to a higher level of clinical self-care? There are several answers to that question, but in the easiest, the shortest answer, the easiest way to describe it, is that we need to develop a kind of critical thinking. And what that means is that we need to ask a lot of questions, and that's what clinicians do. When we are interacting with patients, we are asking a lot of questions. And as far as I am concerned, we can all do that. We can ask a lot of questions, and you have asked your questions, but now what I'm going to do in this opportunity here is I'm going to tell you how to ask more questions so that you can learn how to answer these questions yourself. So this is what would be called a Socratic method of teaching, based on the way that Socrates used to teach. People would ask him questions, and he would just turn it around and ask them questions, and that would help people to come to their own conclusions. So I have found that this is very important, because this questioning process will help us to clear up a lot of the confusion. That's the basic premise of this course. Let's just ask a lot more questions, and I'll give you examples as we go through all these questions. So a simple example to start with, we would like to know, first of all, what's realistically possible with plant medicine. That's just kind of a random question that we can ask. But in a lot of these questions here, that's a basic question that's kind of implied, because people are asking, what herb for this and what herb for that? And one of the questions that we can immediately ask doing this kind of detective work is, well, in this situation, how feasible is it to use plant medicine? And what are the realistic expectations? That's an even better question that we can ask repeatedly through this series of questions that have been posed here. We can ask, what is feasible and what is realistic to expect from plant medicine? Because there's a lot of unrealistic expectations all the way across the spectrum from natural medicine to allopathic medicine. There are a lot of people who feel that allopathic medicine will answer every question, and that's not correct. And there's a lot of people who feel that natural medicine will answer a lot of questions, all the questions, and that's not correct either. And then we also have people who feel that allopathic medicine doesn't have any role for them, and natural medicine doesn't have any role for them either. So to do a little detective work and to start to think like a clinician, one of the first things that we should ask is, what is realistic to be expected in this type of health challenge that natural medicine can provide? And this is a very important thought process, because if we're talking about complex chronic conditions, and people are asking a question, what is the one herb that's going to cure this complex and chronic condition, which is how people start the questioning process very frequently. What that does is it puts us in the position of expecting a lot from natural medicine. And that, unfortunately, is really what is driving a lot of marketing, because the marketing of products is really based on trying to give people a very simple answer to that question. So we need to reframe the question. And instead of saying, I have a complex health challenge and I've had it for many years, what's the herb that's going to solve this? We need to reframe the question, and we need to ask, what can herbal medicine realistically do in this kind of situation? And if we reframe the question that way, then we're not going to be so attracted to quick fixes. We're not going to be attracted to, a good example is like all the claims that are being made now about CBD and cannabis products. A wide range of claims are made about it, that this is going to cure this and this is going to cure that. But that is because we're asking that question in that particular way. What do I do for this? Let's rephrase that and ask, what is feasible in my situation? And then we can start to actually use that question to move in a direction that's more realistic, and it's usually going to be more successful. Because if we ask the question in that way, then what's going to happen is we're not going to be so focused on getting a quick fix or a simple answer. That's probably not going to work. Instead, what we're going to get is we're going to get a different way of viewing our health condition and a different way of viewing plant medicine. So that's a quick introduction here. Now, that might sound a little bit confusing right off, but I'm going to explore this with some of these questions that have come in already. And here's a very good question. Is there a way to simplify the wealth of possible treatments so a layperson could self-treat, or is a practitioner necessary? Well, that's a very, very good question, because it describes the entire dilemma that we are facing here. And the dilemma is actually a really good problem. And so the person who submitted this, again, is there a way to simplify the wealth of possible treatments? Well, let's look at this. This is wonderful that we have a wealth of possible treatments available to us, because there are so many parts of the world, places in the world where there's no treatments available at all. So we have a different kind of problem. We have so many herbs, we have so many products, we have so many different companies telling us to buy this and buy that. We have so many opportunities for natural medicine. How do we sort it all out? Well, it's a wonderful problem, but we do need to have some further education. So in a way, it's a golden age of all these opportunities, but it's very confusing as well. So that's the whole purpose of the course, is let's sort this out. Now, really, a practitioner is just a layperson who has more training and experience. And I also want to clarify that a practitioner is also faced with this wealth of possible treatments. So this is something to consider, is that it's not just people who are looking on the internet who are looking for, answers. It's also the practitioners are trying to find their way through all of this plethora of information and possibilities as well. So a practitioner then is just somebody who is spending more time doing this, but we can become practitioners, and that's the hypothesis or the purpose of this course, is that we can do a lot of it ourselves with critical thinking. So we need some basic guidelines, and we can find those basic guidelines by learning some of the principles, say, from classical Asian medicine. And this is a good example of the kind of learning curve that people are going through now. 10 years ago, there were very few people who were knowledgeable or curious about their body type from Ayurveda. And now it is very well known. And of course, this is simplistic, and it's also a bit confusing. But just having a simple system like that has given a huge number of people a way to manage their own health. If you understand that you have a particular body type and it gets along best with these kind of foods, you're already on your way to getting better. So these are things that are already becoming part of our culture in a big way, and this is part of the learning curve for everybody. Another source is that we can look into the modern research, and I strongly advise people to do that. Really look at what is science telling us now about natural medicine and plant medicine, because science is looking at things in a different kind of light than marketing is. And I'm going to stress that over and over again, that we have to separate the marketing from the real information here. And then finally, another extremely important place that we need to consider for increasing our knowledge about being our own clinician is that there's also a growth curve, a learning curve that is coming from spirituality and spiritual practices. And what does this mean? More and more people are becoming more self-aware on many levels. Qigong and yoga and meditation and all of these things are helping all of us to become more sensitive and aware, and that is directly linked to learning how to take care of ourselves as well. And in a certain way, the more self-aware and sensitive we are to our own body sensations and the information that it's giving us, the better we become at being clinicians of ourselves. You see, so this is a very important aspect of self-care that I also wanted to mention that is happening and that more and more people are learning about. And it's totally valid as well. So the main thing that we can start to do now is ask a lot of questions. And this is a very good question that was submitted. That's a good example of it. And to answer your question specifically now, I know I've gone on a bit of a tangent, but I'm going to answer the question now very specifically, which is, how do we simplify this wealth of treatments, and is a practitioner necessary or not? All right, now I'll tell you how I would answer it. One of the tools that I will offer you here that will solve a lot of problems and answer a lot of questions as we go is that we should start to think in spectrums, not in terms of this herb will do that, but in terms of possibilities of what plant medicines can do and in terms of a spectrum of where your health is. So what does this mean? Well, when somebody is asking the question, what's the best herb for cancer treatment? Or what's the best herb for depression? Okay, that question is being taken completely out of a clinical context. And so we need to start thinking like clinicians, and what the clinicians are going to be thinking about is that we're going to be putting the question on a spectrum of possibilities. So let's look at that. What does that mean on a practical basis? If you are elderly and you have chronic and complicated conditions and you're on multiple medications, then you are at one end of the spectrum, and you need a practitioner more than somebody who is at the opposite end of the spectrum. And if you are younger and your condition is not extremely complex, then it's a lot easier to treat yourself. So that's an example of thinking on a spectrum. And we need to apply that kind of thinking to virtually every question that has come in here. So what else is there? There is the spectrum of resources. All right, that will determine a lot of things. So the more resources that people have, the more you can get outside help. And this is actually the critical determining factor for a lot of people when they're looking at what kind of medicine do I need? And can I treat myself? And can I get help from a practitioner? A lot of it comes down to, do you have the financial resources? And the resources also include, how much time do you have? And how much energy and vitality do you have? So if we look at a spectrum like that, then what we see is that the more time you have, the more you can be your own clinician. The less time you have, the more you're going to have to rely on somebody else to help you. The more money you have, the more you can pay people to help you and go get treatments, and the more you can invest in an herbal pharmacy and so forth. And the less money you have, the more you are going to have to be your own clinician. And I would also add, the more you're going to have to become your own gardener as well, so that you can grow your own herbal medicine. So I hope that that gives you a good brief interview to my thinking process on this. Here's a practical question. Are we going to learn in the course how to prepare our own herbal medicine in different forms, such as tinctures and creams and so forth? No. What I'm going to do is give you an extensive resource file every week of where you can get the herbs in different forms, and that includes the bulk herbs to make teas or decoctions, infusions, herbal baths, whenever you want to use the bulk herbs in larger quantities, generally dry leaf or seeds or things like that, and an extensive list of places where you can get tinctures and a variety of other things, because we're going to be talking about all kinds of different preparations. And what is good here in this question is that you know that herbal medicine comes in a lot of different forms. And that's an answer to several questions that are coming up here. To keep in mind that we don't use herbal medicine just as a pill or a capsule. We use herbal medicine in many, many forms. And so if you are having difficulty digesting something, well, think like a clinician. And if something is not being tolerated by your digestive tract, maybe you should apply it on your skin instead. Or maybe you should inhale it from a diffuser, or maybe you should take a bath in it instead. This is also a way of answering a lot of questions and solving a lot of problems, is that we can use herbs in many, many different forms and get around a lot of the obstacles that people have. Several people have reported that they're having side effects from taking certain herbs. And then the question is, well, is there something wrong with the herb? No, there's something wrong with the dosage, and there's something that's sensitive in your digestive tract, or maybe it's not the right herb for you, or maybe it's just not the right form for you to be using the herb in. So let's look now at a big question. And this question actually has, several people have asked this question in different ways. I have Lyme disease and find myself caught up in all the bad policy that comes with having this disease. I would like to know which herbs David believes would be most beneficial for eradicating these microbes. No one can possibly understand the magnitude of having this disease unless they have it. We desperately need a change from the current policy and practice around this disease. And I would say yes, absolutely. This is a complex condition, and it manifests in different stages and forms, and it is complex for all practitioners. So this is a condition that has many expressions, and therefore, if we're going to start thinking like a clinician, we have to ask, what are those different expressions? And this is where a higher level of a clinical level of self-care is actually needed, because there are so many manifestations of what can happen in persistent chronic Lyme's that affect different systems of the body in different ways for different individuals. And then there are the complicating factors. There's usually a history of antibiotics that has severely affected the digestive tract. I've seen this many, many times. And so we get into these complex issues of how to use herbs in these kind of cases. So one of the first questions to ask here is what is feasible? What's realistic? What can we realistically expect plant medicine to do? And I will address this specifically for the chronic persistent types that go on and on and on and affect people and are so debilitating. And the question that you have posed here, what are the herbs that would be most beneficial for eradicating these microbes? Well, that is the entire problem, is that these microbes are extremely difficult to eradicate. And the reason for that is because they mutate. They are pleomorphic. They take on different forms. And they can make themselves, they can adapt themselves to become resistant to drugs, which they are doing and have done and will continue to do. And they also lodge themselves in various tissues. So the real problem here is, if we're looking at what plant medicine can do, we have to ask that question. What can plant medicine realistically do in complex chronic Lyme's? Well, it can do a lot, actually. And again, we have to think in terms of a spectrum. And here we have the spectrum of severity. And the spectrum of severity is linked very much to a person's constitution and the length of time that they've had it, the number of medications that they've been on, and how much damage the medications have done, and so forth. So on one side, there are people who are getting excellent results using only natural medicine. I can say that as a fact. I can also say that there are large numbers of people who are getting benefits even after serious damage from antibiotics in the digestive tract. But that's not the whole story, because unfortunately, there are also large numbers of people who are doing everything that they know how to do, and they're not getting good results. And this is just the nature of the disease. Now, what do we do then? Well, first of all, we have to get out of the mindset of this is the herb for Lyme's disease. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that, even in the herbal community. We have to look instead at really big groups of herbs, larger categories of herbs that treat different kinds of systems in the body. And once we move into that more holistic way of looking at plant medicine, then it becomes more realistic to have higher expectations about what the plants can do. So I will remind you again that if you are looking for an herb that's going to get rid of the microbes, if you are looking for a treatment that's going to get rid of the microbes, it's a very narrow focus. What we have to look at instead is supporting all the organs and supporting all the tissue levels to their maximum capacity naturally without adding stress or toxicity, and helping to rebalance everything as much as possible in terms of improving nutrition, improving assimilation, reducing overgrowth of pathogens in the digestive tract that may be there because of the antibiotic use, reducing inflammation, reducing pain, and so forth. Herbal medicine can be tremendous for that, but there's no one plant that does that. This is where it becomes almost impossible to use plant medicine in the internet, okay? There are a lot of good products, and there are more coming, and some of these are good formulations, and they can help some people some of the time. So this is how we have to think about this, that there's a broad spectrum of manifestations, there's a broad spectrum of individuals, there's a broad spectrum of the stages of the illness, and there's a huge number of herbs. So how do we put this all together? Well, obviously, I can't tell you that this herb is the best thing for Lyme's. So the important takeaway from this, in this particular conversation that we're having right now, is think differently about herbal medicine. Think of herbal medicine applied to each individual system And that's where you're going to start to get to a more sophisticated level of herbal medicine. So what I have found clinically is that for a lot of people, you can't do anything at all until you correct the digestive system because it's been so badly damaged from antibiotics. So there's a group of herbs that's excellent for that. Those are going to be the aromatic teas and the spices and things like ginger and cardamom and fennel and so forth. And sometimes the bitter herbs are also going to be extremely beneficial, like the gentian and the artichoke leaf and the wormwood and things like that. But when you are depleted, you have to be extremely cautious with those bitter herbs. Then there are going to be the anti-inflammatories, and there's a huge range of anti-inflammatories. And of course, everybody's going to think of turmeric. Well, that might be okay, but maybe not if your digestive system is very sensitive. And then we also need to think about the herbs that cross over, because a lot of the anti-inflammatories are also very good nervine protectants. And so we also think of things like gotu kola and bacopa and the neuroprotectives. And then we think of things that are very good for the connective tissues. That's how we think as clinicians. So that's the answer, is we think in groups of herbs for specific tissues and organs, and then we try to apply that as much as possible for the individual. Now, of course, with Lyme's, it's extremely complicated, but we need to get to the next level of self-care with this. And that requires a lot of education. And I'll just be real honest, and that is that everybody is learning all of this together. Okay, the practitioners are just one step ahead because they're spending a little bit more time with it, all right? But there's a lot of experimentation that also happens. And that's one thing to keep in mind. There are ways to experiment with herbs that are safe and effective, and ways to not experiment with herbs. So use things very, very slowly. And this is where the increased level of self-awareness is really important. Knowing your body and knowing what the reactions are telling you, this is crucial to learn how to read what your body is telling you at a more and more intimate present time level. That way, we can also become our own practitioners just by working with the biological relationship that we have with the herbs when we consume them. And the thing about Lyme's is that it is so changeable that an herb that is good for you today may not be good for you tomorrow. Okay, that's the problem with this. So we need a very high level of self-awareness, a very careful approach to experimentation, and we need a home pharmacy that has a variety of things that address different organs and tissues at various times. So I know that sounds complicated, and it is, because the condition is complicated, but I'll just end on a positive note and tell you that many people have had total remission. There's no doubt about it. And many people are living with Lyme disease at a much more comfortable and functional level because of herbal medicine. All right. The final answer to this, we have a whole module on this. It's a lot of information. Let me jump over here to some of the things that people are putting in and see if I can find something. What types of herbs do I use personally and why on a daily basis or weekly? My personal story would help you understand. Very good question, and thank you for posting that. And I use a variety of herbs on a rotating basis in the same way that I just described to you. So I will take some herbs first thing in the morning with some juice. Sometimes I like to use hawthorn because as I am aging, I find that hawthorn is very supportive for the cardiovascular system, and it's also very good for cerebral circulation. So hawthorn is a very safe, nutritive type of herb for the cardiovascular system, and it's very easy to use. Just to put it in a little juice or water. I will typically do that 3 or 4 times a week. Another thing that I like to use is milky oat seed tincture, and I just put that in oatmeal. And so there are ways that we can bring herbal medicine into our food as well. And this is also a way of learning to think like a clinician, but it's actually more like learning to think like a cook. What goes well together? So we think in terms of flavors and we think in terms of compatibility and so forth. But if you take milky oat seed tincture and put it in oatmeal, it's totally compatible. It's basically the same plant, just two different forms. But oatmeal is nourishing and warming, and it's also a very nice base for some of the other tonic herbs. So I like to take a little ashwagandha sometimes in the oatmeal, things like that. And also the aromatic herbs, I consume tulsi tea and things like that. And if I feel any kind of digestive disturbance, then I will chew fennel and cardamom seeds. I do all the things that I tell people to do. But then I also take some of the other herbs as needed on a regular basis, or not as needed on a symptomatic basis, I should say. So there's two levels of using herbs. One is rotating through things on a daily or weekly basis, and then the other is just having a little home pharmacy to use for things that are necessary. But the point that's most important here is that I have a little home pharmacy and I know how to use it. And that's the goal. If you develop a home pharmacy for yourself, you see, the things that I have in my home pharmacy, they're things that I need for myself. So sometimes I need a little bit of linden flower mixed with a little bit of lemon balm. Tincture, half and half. It's a great little drink to take before bed with a little water. It's very relaxing, gives good sleep. For those with high blood pressure, which I don't have, fortunately, it can help lower it, and it's very good for the cardiovascular system. It's good for relaxing the nervous system. So we can use these things at a food grade level, just on an ongoing basis. But then there are other things that I know clinically that I have used before when I've had more serious health challenges, which I have had. And the experiences that I have had with herbal medicine has been extremely positive. I know from personal experience that very serious things can be treated because I spent a lot of time in India and Nepal and South America. And these are places where you get a great opportunity to learn how to treat a lot of different things because you're going to get them yourself. All right, I hope that's helpful. The idea here is not so much the individual herbs that I use, but more the rotating basis concept. And that is also an answer to another question that comes up frequently, and that is, how long should I take herbs? Well, the longer you are taking something, the smaller the dose. All right, so again, we're thinking in terms of a spectrum. And again, if you have something that's more acute, you will take higher doses for a shorter period of time. Or if you want to rotate through things, you may want to try a program, and this is something that I have developed over the years for both myself and many other people. People say, well, what is the best thing, for example, to protect the brain? And how long should I take them? Should I be taking some of these neuroprotectives like bacopa and rosemary and gotu-kola and turmeric? Should I be taking these at a high dose every single day? And my answer is no. Take them in a low dose and rotate through them. So if you have 4 different herbs, take 1 per day at a lower dose and just switch through them. Because what we want to see is we don't want to feel ourselves getting overstimulated or overheated or overly groggy or having the stomach get upset. We don't want to feel anything, actually. What we want to feel is, in retrospect, we want to feel an absence of problems and an absence of effects from the herbs. What we want to do is to be able to look back after doing this program for a year and realize that our cognitive function has actually improved and we didn't even notice it. And eventually what we want to do is we want to be able to hang out with our friends and realize that they're aging a lot faster than we are. So that's a basic idea that we want to keep in mind here, is that we don't need to think in terms of pounding something in the body with a high dose of herbs just because we heard it's good for something. Let's think very, very holistically about gradually incorporating things so that they're very biocompatible and we can use them for a long period of time. And if we're going to use them for a long period of time, the secret is the dosage. Okay, I hope that was a good answer for you. And let's see here, we have a few more minutes and then I'm going to turn it back to Anne here. Let's see here. Okay, this question also covers several other questions that were like it. I'm a 77-year-old female and have osteoarthritis, mainly in my knees, which causes a mobility problem. I take chondroitin, MSM, and glucosamine. I took 500 milligrams of turmeric with black pepper twice a day, but after a month, it caused my blood to thin quite badly. I heard boswellia helps osteoarthritis. Please advise. Excellent question. And I will just give you the simplest answers first. Yes, boswellia can help. And as a matter of fact, boswellia can be taken just as a supplement. It's easily available at the retail level. It's the boswellic acids that are extracted from a specific species of frankincense, and it can be helpful. But here's the thing about herbal medicine and pain treatments and mobility problems, is that there is nothing that works like over-the-counter strong anti-inflammatories. And so that goes back to the question of what can we realistically expect? What the herbs can do for osteoarthritis is that in some cases they can give some significant pain relief. But it generally has to be done with some of the stronger herbs. And so those stronger herbs include things like the cannabis products and CBD and higher doses of turmeric and higher doses of boswellia and other kinds of things like the California poppy, herbs that basically have more of a sedative kind of effect, and they affect the entire system, of course. So there's nothing, unfortunately, that will just knock out the pain like a strong anti-inflammatory will. But we know that the strong anti-inflammatories, especially the prescription anti-inflammatories, actually slow down the healing process and make it worse. Now, the question that you're asking is a very good opportunity to talk about the different ways that we can use herbs. And I'll also mention that it's a very good example of a warning. Turmeric is not as harmless as people think it is. And as we get older, and especially if we are on medications, we have to think about herb-drug interactions. And so it could be that it's causing the blood thinning because you might be on a medication that it's interacting with. That's one possibility, but those are questions we have to ask. Why is your blood thinning from turmeric? We also have to ask, what product did you take? Because if we're thinking like clinicians, the first thing we're going to say is, well, you know, taking turmeric as a powder cooked in your food over a longer period of time is a more biocompatible dose that will probably not produce that problem than taking 500 milligrams of a strong extract. You see, I don't know if what you're taking is just powder or whether it's a strong extract. That makes a huge difference. So these are the kinds of questions that we have to ask. What are the products? What's the dosage? What other medications are you on? And obviously, as we get older, this becomes more problematic. But the real nice answer here, okay, the real important information for you is that we don't have to take herbs in this kind of situation. We can put them all over us instead. So if you are having problems digesting herbs, or you are having problems with herbs creating any kind of adverse reaction at all, which is typically in the digestive tract first, then think outside the box and think in terms of what other form could you use the herb in. Now, with osteoarthritis, and this is a topic we have an entire module on, by the way, with osteoarthritis, external treatment is just as important, or in some cases, more important than internal treatment. So I like to advise that people use a combination of things externally, because we also don't want to overload the body with just plant alternatives to over-the-counter medications. You see, we don't want to try to duplicate that. What we want to do is get the best out of plant medicine. And yes, there's a role, especially with the cannabis products, externally, CBD oils and things like that. There's a place for that. And internally also. But anything that kills pain is going to be hard on the body at some level eventually. Even CBD, even the claims that it's totally non-toxic, that's not true. CBD is hard on your digestive system. CBD is hard on your liver, and most of the CBD that's out there is not even CBD. So there's quality control issues here also. The idea that I would propose instead is that what we are really trying to do is find different ways to feed the body the herbs that work on many different levels, not just for pain, not just for inflammation, but we also want to think about what are the herbs that are really rich in minerals to help support the bone? What are the herbs that are really good for the connective tissue? Because that's crucial in osteoarthritis as well, okay? And then we also want to think about the different methods of administering. And so I frequently advise that people go to Ayurveda for medicated oils. And Ayurveda has a huge range of formulas of herbs that have been cooked in a base like sesame oil. And these are wonderful things to apply over and over, especially as we get older and the skin gets really dry. It gets really thirsty. And so we can feed the skin with a lot of herbal oil, and that can also be a base for adding stronger things. We can put some tinctures into it, and we can also put some essential oils into it. So there's many ways that we can actually treat this condition externally and get out of all of those complexities and contradictions. And finally, you can also take baths in herbs. So this is a big subject, but that's the answer. How do we get out of all of this? And I also included a few simple herbal ideas there, but it's the principles that are more important to understand, because that's what gives us the best results. Okay, so Anne, I'm going to pause here and turn this back to you, because I know that you have a few things to say about the course.
Thank you, David. Well, we're here with David Crowe, learning about his course, Plant Medicine for Modern Epidemics, which begins on Wednesday, January the 29th. Please log on to plantmedicineformodernepidemics.com for all the details and a link to register. Now, we want to get back to your questions, but first, there are some special elements about this course that I'd like to share with you. So the course takes place on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And I'd like you to go over to our website, plantmedicineformodernepidemics.com, to check out all the details. This is going to be a 6-month training where you'll develop a complete holistic understanding of the practices, tools, and principles you'll need to think like a clinical herbalist and help heal health issues for yourself and others. This course will feature live teachings, interactive training sessions, and experiential practices with David. It's targeted to advanced beginners or full clinicians, anyone who wishes to develop a home pharmacy. And this is one of the most comprehensive trainings that David has done here with us here at the Shift Network to date. So there are 12 primary modules, including 19 120-minute sessions. Each month, there will be 3 sessions with David, 2 focused training sessions on specific modern epidemics, and 1 clinically focused group coaching session on health issues. Plus, you have an option to add 2 one-on-one personal consultations to further support your healing. You can learn more about all of this, including the optional consultation that you can add on over at plantmedicineformodernepidemics.com. Now, if for any reason you're unable to join us live, don't worry, you're not going to miss the teachings. You'll receive full audio and video replays, transcripts, and any handouts through our course homepage. Also, I'd like to remind you that we offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on all of our courses, giving you full 2 weeks until February the 12th in this case to make sure you absolutely love the course. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to connect to a private Facebook community group to stay connected with one another. Now, everyone who registers receives the Plant Medicine for Modern Epidemics bonus collection. These include the following audio dialogues from David. The first one is called Simple and Effective Combinations of Herbs and Essential Oils. This is from the Winter of Wellness Summit 2019. Next, we have Wisdom in the Senses, an Ayurvedic approach to well-being. Also, gut-brain connection, how plant-based diet and spices can be used to sharpen your brain. That is hosted by David with Dr. Trupti Gokani. And finally, you receive 20% discount from the amazing Floracopia online store. That's my favorite place to shop for essential oils. Now, when you register by midnight Pacific, December the 17th, you receive this special video bonus from David. It's the Plant Medicine Summit Top 10. These are selected audios from our content-rich Plant Medicine Summit 2018, which will support this course beautifully. All right, I'm handing it back to David for some more questions.
Thank you. All right, well, we are running out of time already, and there are so many questions, but I will once again combine some of these. And here is a question that is presented by many people, actually. What's the best plant treatment for depression? And closely related to that is stress and anxiety. And so this repeats itself many times. Many people are asking about that. And I just want to mention that we have a whole module dedicated to this. But I would like to go back and address these questions, asking the questions that we would ask as clinicians. All right. Now, there are herbs that everybody's going to think of right away in terms of treating depression and anxiety. And that's good, because 10 years ago, people didn't know about herbs for treating depression and anxiety. But that is still allopathic thinking. That's, you have depression, take this herb. And the problem with that is that it frequently doesn't work very well. Now, I'm going to step back and I'm going to answer this question in a very big holistic context first. And that is, the best herb for treating depression is the one that makes you happy. Well, which one is that? Well, maybe it's not even an herb. Maybe it's forest bathing, which is just a fancy scientific modern way of saying spending some time in nature. But spending time in nature is very antidepressant. It's very good for stress and anxiety. If we're thinking like that, then we can start to see the outlines of what the plants are actually doing for us, because we feel better in nature. So why not bring the plants into the home more? And why not take up gardening? Because it could be that maybe the best way to use the herbs is not to ingest them, thinking of them as being a medicine, but maybe to develop a relationship with them instead and take care of them. Now, if we start to think like that, then there's all kinds of possibilities that start to open up. And the answer to all these questions about how do I treat depression and anxiety becomes, we improve the overall quality of our lives. And that has to do with deepening our relationship with nature at many levels. So that's a very holistic answer. And when we take natural medicine, we are deepening our relationship with nature. We are consuming the plants. We are developing a closer relationship with the plants. But now let's think like clinicians, all right? What kind of depression? How old are you? How long have you had it? What is happening in your diet? Because there is such a strong association, and this has been known forever in classical medical systems, such a strong association between digestive health and the brain and our moods. And now this is becoming more clearly articulated with modern research and confirmed by science that yes, if we have food allergies and sensitivities and we get a lot of gas and bloating, that we don't feel good emotionally. So there's a lot of different aspects of depression, anxiety, and stress that are all related to how we are digesting our food. So we have to look at all the different systems again. Then we also have to look at all the socioeconomic factors, and we just have to ask the question again, what can we realistically expect from herbal medicine? Now, what we can realistically expect is that if we have the right diagnosis in terms of where is the depression coming from? Is it coming because you had a surgery a few months ago and it impacted your brain from the anesthesia and you need to do a specific type of detox? That can happen. Is it coming because you are one of millions of Americans who are in an epidemic of depression and despair because of socioeconomic pressures? Well, maybe we shouldn't even bother treating that. Maybe we should have a revolution instead. And so we need to look carefully at the different kinds of depression, stress, and anxiety. And we need to understand that on the one hand, we want to feel better, but it's also valuable information. And then we need to understand, where is that information coming from? Is it coming from the family? Is it coming from the liver? Is it coming from some toxins? Do we need to detox? Or is it coming because we're actually depleted? And do we need to build ourselves up again? So there's a wide spectrum of herbs that can be used according to the type of depression. And I'll give you some broad categories. You may need some of the aromatic herbs to enliven the brain. You may need hawthorn to improve circulation. You may need something like ginkgo to improve circulation to the brain. You may need some healthy stimulants, like maybe take up the habit of drinking yerba mate from a bombilla. There's a lot of different groups of herbs. Maybe you need some fragrance from some essential oils like rosemary that has a stimulant effect. In general, the herbs that are going to be beneficial for depression are going to be those that nourishes and energizes and give us more stimulation without being overly stimulating. And the herbs that are going to be best for stress and anxiety are going to be the calmatives and relaxants. I could go on for quite a while. And as Anne mentioned, I am going to go on for months and months and months. So I'm going to turn it back to you now, Anne, because I see that we are running out of time yet again, and you have some more to say.
I do. And mostly just excited that you're going to go on for 6 months with us. So it's been a great hour. And I want to thank everyone for being with us today. Plant Medicine for Modern Epidemics begins on Wednesday, January the 29th. And please go over and visit plantmedicineformodernepidemics.com. You'll learn about that course, and there'll be a link to register there. And remember, if you register by midnight Pacific, December the 17th, you'll receive the special Plant Medicine Summit Top 10. Also, don't forget to check out the option to add on the 2 additional consultations with David. Again, I've benefited so much from seeing David for my own medical care, and I can attest what a skilled and generous clinician and resource he is. So, David, always a pleasure to be with you. I'm going to pass it over for final words, and then we'll close this session. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, in closing, what I will focus on here for just a moment is a very nice question that came in that really sums up why I enjoy doing this work. And the question is, how do we bridge the gap from plant consciousness and spiritual evolution to clinical level herbal treatments? I thought this was a very, very astute question. And my answer is that the best way to recognize, the best way to bridge this gap is to recognize that there isn't a gap. And that's how I would like to close, is to recognize that plant consciousness is what we are using in clinical level herbal treatments. So let's think about that as we sign off, that when we use plant medicine, we are using a highly, highly evolved form of natural consciousness. And that consciousness is in our body all the time because we live because of the plants. And the plants are giving us information from nature all the time. So when we are thinking of plant medicine, we're talking about consuming the intelligence of the plants. And the intelligence of the plants contains the sunlight and the moonlight and the 5 elements of earth, water, fire, air, space. And they have been around for a very long time. And they contain a kind of intelligence that our body needs more than ever because of the conditions in the biosphere of the earth. So when we use natural medicine, we are consuming this ancient evolutionary healing kind of consciousness that is in the plants. And that actually gives us reverence for the plants. And that's the link to spiritual evolution. So when we use plant medicine, we can use it very allopathically and symptomatically, and we can just say, okay, I'm going to take this pill and it's going to work on this. Or we can actually take an herb and we can recognize that it is an intelligence that takes care of us and supports the body because of this deep evolutionary relationship that plants and humans have had. And if we are bringing that level of awareness in, then herbal medicine becomes very spiritual. And even at the most sophisticated, complicated levels of clinical practice, we can still cultivate that kind of deep reverence for nature and what the plant medicine realm is giving us. So thank you to everybody for your time, all your wonderful questions. I hope that I was able to give you some specific ideas and also to put it into the broader context so you really understand what we are trying to do so that we don't think too allopathically, that we really can become our own clinicians at a higher level by learning how to think like this, ask these kinds of questions, treat things in broader categories, look at things in a more individualized level. So, Anne, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, David. It was perfect, just wonderful. And thanks, everyone, for joining us. On behalf of all of us here at the Shift Network, I wish you well, and I look forward to having you on this course or on one in the future. Be well.